When looking at the landscape of gaming, we see constant evolution. We see this evolution in hardware, which gives us the resources to put not only more things into games, but also allows us to get more out of each frame being rendered. It's visible in the way that stories are told, from how we once used to drop into a world with no clear direction, to where we are now usually greeted with some form of information on the world or our quest. And of course, this applies to how games are designed. People have gotten way better over the years at designing video games, which has led to genres looking quite different now than what they used to. For all types of genres, there is a clear distinction between 2D and 3D, but generally you will be able to see how the genre continues to evolve. In the case of platformers, we can take a look at how Mario has changed over the years. With Super Mario 64 being the first 3D Mario, it set the stage for how Mario was going to work in 3D. It set up an overworld that would allow you to choose different levels, which would most often be open for you to explore and find different things that could be done. Upon entering the level, you'd get a small hint on what to do, but you could go out of sequence if you felt like it. The next big evolution of the mainline Super Mario series would happen with Super Mario Galaxy. Although the structure was quite similar at first glance, you'd quickly see that the levels were in general a lot less open. This left you in a situation where you'd have a way more guided experience. The precursor and testing of this could be seen in Super Mario Sunshine's Secret of X levels. And for the latest release in the mainline, we have Odyssey, which seems to have gone a step back from the path that the Galaxy games were heading in order to take a step forward in a different direction. Namely focusing on the open world exploration aspect. This time around you aren't moving from one overworld to open levels. Instead, each level is an overworld containing multiple challenges that you may choose how to tackle. However you may view these titles, you can clearly see how they are all born from the same cloth. They all fall under the bigger banner of platformers, while being different from one another in more ways than one. So what about hack and slash games? Hack and slash as a term originated from D&D. The term was used to describe campaigns that were focused on combat rather than in-depth character roleplay. In the land of video games, we can trace the origin of the genre back to beat-em-ups. Like their D&D counterparts, the fun of the games would come from beating up hordes of enemies with your bare fists, or every now and then getting access to a weapon to help with those beatings. But the genre struggled with the introduction of 3D. What would end up being popularized instead was somewhat of a spiritual successor to the genre, with the title that really put it on the map being Devil May Cry. The game broke through by hooking players with its overly cool protagonist Dante, and keeping them by making the players enjoy the battles. As far as what the player is expected to do in the game, there is fighting, a tiny bit of platforming, and some exploring. And it didn't really need to do more either. The game knew what part of it was fun, and every part of the design was there in order for you to get as much fun as possible from the simple act of fighting. Devil May Cry was well received and would end up becoming somewhat of a blueprint for hack and slash games that will come in the future. For me, it's become second nature to group hack and slash games into subcategories. There is the aforementioned DMC style, which focuses heavily on its combat while allowing for player creativity. God of War style, which focuses more on its story and setting, while having a more guided combat system with preset combo notations for you to learn and make use of in different environments that often come with their own hazards. And last, there is the Horde slasher, with games like Dynasty Warriors giving you hordes of enemies for you to plow through, and in general focuses on creating that power fantasy for you. All of these games are similar in the sense that the gameplay is focused on melee weapon combat and the player being expected to form combos to juggle their enemies. In case you're a fan of the genre, you'll most likely have a favorite type, but if you've never really played these types of games, I wouldn't blame you if all of these look the same. This is probably what has made the genre struggle. Although we have seen people push the limits of these games and creating numerous combo videos showing what was possible, it was very clear that the hack and slash genre was a niche one. It kinda goes back to what I spoke about in my Red Dead Redemption video, where an extreme can become something special for some, while being something that others don't understand or just straight up hate. The genre seemed to stagnate on the old ways of doing things, and with seemingly fewer and fewer developers taking on the challenge of creating a good game for the genre, times were looking bleak. But the next step was on its way.
Sky turns red, swallowing up each and every being in this town. Hopes, hearts, everything is falling down.
Far away in the skyline, crowd of apparitions crawling around. It's calling, growing louder.
Are we the future of this burning hell?
It's a fight for a paradise, fight for our life. So keep holding on, holding on.
Ever since the release of Bayonetta a little over a decade ago, Platinum has been hailed as one of the best studios in the world at making hack and slash games. During this decade, they have created many titles including Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, Wonderful 101, and Nier Automata. I will classify all of these games as hack and slash games, but they all stand to do something different in order to push the evolution of the genre and see what is possible. Starting with Bayonetta, Platinum created a title that would serve as a blueprint for their future games. The thing that's always stood out to me about Platinum's combat systems is that no matter your skill level, they somehow make you look stylish. I can still remember the first time I played Devil May Cry and doing the same combo over and over again with some awkward pauses sprinkled in there for me to casually run over to the enemy so I could do another one. This tactic obviously being replaced upon unlocking Stinger, and Stinger spamming becoming the new high-level meta. Devil May Cry asks a lot out of you before it allows you into a position where you can make combat flow, while Bayonetta allows you to feel cool on your way to becoming competent. Moving on to Metal Gear Rising, Platinum did a fantastic job interpreting Metal Gear into a genre it had never visited before. This still being a Metal Gear title, there were some things that would stay true to the history of the series, with the UI being kept similar to how it's traditionally been, to the stealth element still being a factor. Now granted, it didn't force this on you, but it was still an interesting idea to allow the player to act like a ninja and thin out the enemy troops before jumping into the more fast-paced action. Outside of that, they also added a little mini-game using the sword mode, which is performed by positioning your cut and then choosing your angle with the two analog sticks. By pushing the idea of using the sticks for other things than moving and controlling the camera, Wonderful 101 was born. By using the analog stick to draw out different shapes, you were able to switch between different weapons. Much like Metal Gear Rising sword mode, this can be seen as a bit of a minigame that breaks up the monotony of only pressing buttons and allows you to do something completely different that still ties back in with the original goal of kicking ass. And then we have Nier. As far as the combat goes, it's quite similar to the earlier titles featuring one character that you control. And that's how I was playing the game when I first started. The moment when everything changed for me though was when I stopped using the lock-on system and started forcing myself to aim manually with the pod. There was a small element added to the combat that managed to break up the gameplay, much like Wonderful 101 did. Where Nier became different from the earlier titles was in the way that the world and progression was structured. Generally in hack and slash games, progression has been handled by the way of unlocking moves. This time around, Platinum created a system that is most commonly seen in RPGs. The character would level up and get increased stats, as well as the chip system that allowed you to custom fit the character to your preferred playstyle. Keeping on with the RPG inspirations, Nier had a ton of side quests for you to do in case you wanted to learn more about the world or just needed a break from the main story. In order to facilitate this, they created an open world for you to explore. Which brings us to Astral Chain. I will be avoiding any story spoilers in the rest of the video, but I would still like to warn for spoilers as I'll be showing examples of gameplay that genuinely caught me off guard. With the solid back catalog of games that Platinum has produced, I instantly decided that I was going to buy the game. This made me avoid any promotional material in order to experience everything as fresh as possible. So based on what I knew about the game and the limited amount of promotional material that I saw, it seemed like another hack and slash game from Platinum, which was more than enough for me. What I didn't expect was that it was going to be a culmination of what they had been working on for the past decade. The combat, as usual, is great, and is still building on the same base that they have been refining ever since Bayonetta. But the game also borrows from Wonderful 101's commands. You are taught early on that you are able to control your character and your legion independently from one another. This leads to you being able to use the connecting chain in combat by drawing circles around enemies that you want to ensnare, or draw a line in the path of a charging enemy in order to catapult them across the arena. It sets this combat in a world that's composed as a mix of the traditional mission setup of hack and slashes, while setting those missions in open worlds. These worlds are small in scale, but are packed with creative ways to explore for secrets or doing side quests that sometimes lead to combat and other times make you scratch your head as you're trying to figure out the solution to a puzzle. Doing these things allow you to acquire upgrade materials and experience, which will allow you to not only upgrade your character but also custom fit your legion into the type that you want to play. The game sets itself up like this and everything is working well, and then out of nowhere you're thrown into the stealth aspect of the game. Of course, the stealth in this game works very differently from how it worked in Metal Gear, but it still shows their willingness to take what they've created before and rework it into something that will work for the game they are currently developing. With all of these aspects in mind, the game is capable of giving you the traditional hack and slash experience, while also providing things to do that would traditionally only be included in other genres. While this might come as a disappointment to people that were hoping for full-on action, it also creates a more inviting space for people who traditionally would not be interested in the genre. The expansion of the genre in this way allows for people who would usually shy away from games like this to get a taste of what makes the genre great, while also having a backup of some very enjoyable moments, even if they don't want to go too deep on the combat. I chose the word expansion rather than evolution here because I don't necessarily think that this is a path that all games in the genre should go. But I do think it's great that Platinum has managed to change up the perception of what a hack and slash can be. And with the release of this title, I think that they have managed to get on a good path to fulfill one of the company's goals outlined on their website: to create games for a global audience. If you're still here watching the video, I would like to start out by thanking you. And as always, if you have any feedback, I would appreciate you letting me know in the comments. I would also like to know your opinion on the topic. Last thing I want to say is that if you enjoyed or see potential in what I'm doing, then please feel free to show support by subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Have a great day.